sensing this danger. This is the greatest showman! He is floating on air now!
The Multicultural AFL Footy Show with Venessa, Harbir, Fouad and George Grossios.
Multicultural AFL Footy Show. I am Venessa, and on tonight's remote panel are Harbir, George, and Fouad in Adelaide. Hello, guys, from near and far.
Hello, Venessa.
Hello, Venessa.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Last weekend turned out to be the most difficult for the AFL as teams raced to and from locations beating COVID-19 deadlines to get through all the matches by Sunday night. We are sorry that there was no radio or TV program last week due to COVID-19 lockdown health and safety concerns, and for safely recording remote this week. It is the only way we can ensure keeping this program flowing under the circumstances. We hope by next week we shall be recording from the studio in more familiar surroundings. Last Friday, Carlton, playing with a virtually no rocks, humbled St Kilda to win by 31 points. The Western Bulldogs trashed the Adelaide Crows by 49 points, while Geelong had a tough time beating North Melbourne by 20 points. And in an upset, Collingwood double West Coast score, winning by 45 points. Melbourne squashed the Gold Coast by 98 points, and a surprise when Hawthorn beat Brisbane by 2 goals. Sydney came from behind to defeat Essendon by 7 points, as Fremantle buried Richmond's final hope by emerging 4-point winners. And in the last match of the round, Port Adelaide prevailed over the GW Giants by 27 points. All these results are favouring sides that all of a sudden have come into contention at playing finals. The logjam on the ladder is growing. Where to now, Javier?
Well, Venessa, where to from now on? I think we are going to have more exciting matches in the last rounds. That's where we are at the moment. Stakes are high at the moment, and see who can prevail like tough on-field and off-field conditions, which are testing everyone at the moment, be it players, staff, fans, and everyone. So, and speaking of teams prevailing in the hard situations, Carlton and St Kilda both were in the hard situation at the moment, but good on Carlton for prevailing in that one. I think in this era where it's like a midfield dominated era, it was good to see two forwards playing a big role in the game. Mackay on one side and King on the other side, although one side had to be the winners. But what a performance by the forwards, and it's probably changing the game a little bit as well and giving more importance to the forwards, which they all deserve. And on the other hand, St Kilda, they've just let an opportunity slip by, especially as you mentioned that they had a ruck dominance in the form of Rowan Marshall, but they just let it slip. So it's for St Kilda to where they go from there. Do they still have the hunger or not? Do they still have the capability to do something? We'll see in the coming games. And how good was Connor's goal? Coming back, not much of an influence in the game, but what a fantastic goal by him. Okay, look, there was nothing much in the Adelaide and the Bulldogs game. Adelaide playing away from home in a stadium which is they're not very familiar with, and plus they had a Bulldog side which are flying high at the moment. The result wasn't that much of a surprise to anyone, but they've done a bit of a dint to Bontempelli's Brownlow votes, so he couldn't score any, I believe, in that game. But then again, on the other side, Beveridge would be happy that 12 different goal kickers in that game. So that was fantastic. And how good is Josh Shakey at the back? He kept Taylor Walker quiet for that long. He managed to kick a couple of goals at the end, but by the time damage was already done, and Bulldogs were flying high by that time. Although Alex Keith, he missed a good opportunity to play against his old team. Would have loved to play against them, but all in all, great performance by Bulldogs, and good on Adelaide to at least putting up a little bit of fight.
It was funny because two coaches were very, very happy with the performance of the two teams. Their teams. Here we go in Adelaide. Matthew Nix is saying he assured the Adelaide fans that Adelaide is not too far away from a success. I'm not sure which game he was watching at the time, because if he calls that success very close to success, I don't know what he did. like to lose by 49 points, which he admitted that they were playing a top team. But yeah, there's a long way for Adelaide, I think. With the next game, George.
Yes, Fouad, down in Tasmania was Geelong defeating North Melbourne by 20 points. Overall, another professional performance by Geelong, notching up an important win in what shaped up as a tricky fixture. At this stage of the year, when you're a premiership contender, you just want to see your team have a solid win and avoid injuries. Geelong's defence was at its stingy best, and Geelong supporters would be pleased that late inclusion Zach Guthrie played a starring role in defence. North Melbourne, to their credit, they never gave up and they gave Geelong a tough match, made them work hard. They were narrowly ahead at quarter time and got to within 2 goals with a couple of minutes to go in the last quarter, and that's all you can hope for from a team rebuilding. We keep saying it every week. The Roos are a team on the rise, gentlemen.
How about the Magpies? Here we go. The second game, or the second win for Robert Harvey. That is a great win, 45 points. We've seen a glimpse from the Eagles by beating Adelaide Crows and St Kilda in the last 2 games. But to get crushed by a team like Collingwood by 45 points, I think, in my opinion, as much as it hurts me to say, they are not a premiership contender or top 8. So I can't see them making the top 8.
Thank you, and we'll be back with more reviews and round 22 previews after this break. You are with the Multicultural AFL Footy Show. Back again as we continue with our reviews. Brisbane lost to Hawthorn and the demise of Richmond by Fremantle. But first, let's go to Melbourne's emphatic destruction of the Gold Coast. Fouad, what are your thoughts, please?
Yeah, thanks, Venessa. What a great game from one-sided team, Melbourne. Melbourne destroyed the Gold Coast by 98 points. Mind you, Melbourne has lost to Adelaide and they also lost to Hawthorn. They lost to Adelaide and Collingwood, and they drew with Hawthorn. But they regrouped again, and then they went to demolish Melbourne by, as I said, 98 points. But the scaring part of that game was Melbourne had an extra 38 inside 50, which it's fantastic, for a team. And they ended up scoring, their scoring shots were magnificent, and they scored so many goals. And mind you, the Gold Coast Suns scored 3 goals in the first half, and they only scored in the first quarter, and they only scored 1 goal in the last 3 quarters, which is not good enough for an AFL team. And the next game, of course, is the game between Hawthorn and Brisbane, which, hey, how is that? Hawthorn beat Brisbane again. So is Brisbane started to lose grips on the top 8 or top 4? The way I see it, they're not playing as good as they have been. No confidence in themselves, and they've been losing more games than winning. So to me, they have to improve dramatically in the last 3 games. Otherwise, they may find it very hard in the final. And of course, what about Clarkson, the greatest coach of all times at the moment, in my opinion, 4 premierships in 17 years, and he had to go, or Hawthorn let him go for an untried rookie coach, or he's not a coach yet, in Sam Mitchell. So what do you think, George?
Fouad, the manner in which this has been handled, one of the game's greatest coaches, is disgraceful, and it trashes Clarkson's legacy. We're talking about a guy that's won at the club 4 premierships. It makes Hawthorn look amateurish and unstable. I don't know why Hawthorn were in such a rush, Fouad, to make a decision on his contract extension when there was a year to go. They could have waited another 12 months and allowed Sam Mitchell to further develop his skills and continue to be mentored by one of the game's greatest coaches. Yeah. But anyway, the decision's been made.
Absolutely, George, because what I thought is what they said is they were worried about Sam Mitchell leaving to go to, say, Collingwood or Carlton. So what? He's untried coach anyway. And then let's we've got the best coach in the land, and Sam Mitchell would be silly to leave Collingwood, to leave Hawthorn because he thinks that he would do better otherwise elsewhere. Not good enough.
And in the Sydney versus Essendon clash, it was the Swans prevailing by 7 points, one of the games of the season. Both sides virtually going goal for goal in the third quarter, and the Swans sealing the match late in the fourth quarter to keep their top four hopes alive. After a disappointing loss to GWS last week, where they blew a golden opportunity to stay in the top eight, the Dons served it up to the Swans, but in the end, the Swans were a bit more composed and clinical in the last quarter. Tom Papley was brilliant with 4 goals, 3 of them coming in that important third quarter when the Swans were trying to take control of the match. And on a controversial note, I believe that Franklin shouldn't have played.
I like that.
Oh, well, I agree with you, Franklin. There should be a strong message sent to everyone about the injuries, which they failed to deliver this time. So AFL is to blame for that. And other team, Fremantle, looked at the way they performed against a good team, Richmond. And they were without their superstars, no Fife, no Walters, no Pearce. And they're back in the top 8. Now it's up to them if they can stay over there. Other teams have to work their way up, but they're already there. So they have a sort of advantage against the other teams. So if they can stay up and perform well, they will stay up in the top 8, which is a fantastic result for them. And if now Fife and others come at some stage, it might boost their chances of staying in the top 8. But we'll see what happens in the future.
What about Port Adelaide? What a great game, Harbir, to see Port Adelaide beating the Giant by 27 points. And this is, I'll just say something, and I'd like to have your opinion on that. The Greater Western Sydney lost a golden opportunity to, get back to the top 8. But having said that, they just lost to the Port Adelaide by 27 points, and they were not good enough to be there, to be quite honest. What do you think, Harbir?
Yeah, but the thing is, Port Adelaide, they again haven't beaten a top 4 team which is above them or so, and Charlie Dixon is only performing with the teams who are sort of not doing that good at the moment. So a real test will be Port Adelaide. It will be in the coming weeks for them.
Absolutely, and it was very sad to see Jacob Hooper get injured, like neck injury. So we wish him a speedy recovery as well.
Thank you, guys. Let's move on now to this week's matches, as every round from here is a battle for the last 3 positions in the top 8. Javier, how do you see the Doggies going against Essendon?
Well, I believe it's going to be a close game. Doggies might prevail because they still hold an edge over Essendon in some fields. And we've seen Essendon, they're letting that game slip against Sydney as well when they were in the front as well. That's not a good sign. But having said that, a lot of their players are fighting too. Stringer is in good form. Parrish, he's one of the best midfielders coming up at this stage. And everyone is sort of gelling together well in Essendon. So they can surprise a few teams. And I wouldn't be too surprised if they surprise Bulldogs as well. They still have to be at their absolute best to beat the Essendon. But I believe they will come on top.
Oh, well, Richmond, I guess Richmond have got the easiest game in the round because if they can't beat North Melbourne, being the premiers from last year, I think it will be a great game for Richmond to redeem themselves. So I tip Richmond. But George, what about the great game between Geelong and GWS? That is going to be one of the matches of the round. What do you think?
Yeah, look, Geelong, Fouad returned to the category. They've had a strong record there this season. I'd expect them to be way too strong for GWS. GWS have had a really, really difficult couple of weeks with injuries, not to mention the fact that they were supposed to play in Queensland last week and at the last second were redirected to the southern states. So that turmoil The impact on them has been enormous. They're separated from friends and family, and of course that makes it really, really difficult to concentrate on your footy. But expect Geelong to be way, way too strong, and Geelong to make a strong case for top spot.
And on that note, we'll go to a break, but stay tuned for more previews, including the big one between the West Coast and Melbourne when we return. Welcome back. Carlton played the Gold Coast from Marvel Stadium as over in Perth, the West Coast Eagles go head-to-head with Melbourne in what is going to be a very interesting game as Port Adelaide battle for a bragging rights in the South Australia Derby. Sunday, Houghton take on Collingwood from Hobart, St Kilda face Sydney in a tough game from Marvel Stadium, and Fremantle at Optus play host to Brisbane. George, what are your thoughts, please?
Well, Venessa, Carlton were superb at this venue last week, while Gold Coast, who also played at Marvel last weekend, were abysmal. I would expect Carlton to keep their faint top 8 chances alive. In some respects, this match is the Alistair Clarkson Cup. All sorts of rumours swirling around that Alistair Clarkson may end up at Carlton or possibly Gold Coast. So watch this space on this particular outcome. Now, Harbir, West Coast versus Melbourne, that promises to be an interesting clash for a myriad of different reasons.
Yeah, definitely. It will mainly depend upon the West Coast, as in what form they come into this game, because we've seen their graph going up and down all the time. Having said that, they are at the Optus Stadium, which is kind of like a fortress to them. But having Melbourne as a challenge, that's going to be a very hard thing for them as well. So they really need to come up with their good game. And Melbourne, we've seen them to some extent rectifying their forward woes against Gold Coast. But really, we would say when they come up against a good defensive opposition, how can they perform as well? So it's going to be a good test. Current form, I believe Melbourne will come on top.
What about Adelaide and Port Adelaide? The derby, the showdown. Now, if I go back to the comment that Matthew Nicks made earlier in the week or late last week, that the best is still to come from Adelaide, and we started to see some glimpse of hope. I can't see that hope coming too soon against Port Adelaide. It's going to be one of the toughest games, but the toughest thing is going to be for the fans and spectators, because we don't know whether we're going to play against in front of some crowds or is going to be a reduced crowd. My tip there is Port Adelaide is too good for Adelaide. What about Hawthorn, George, against Collingwood?
Well, Fouad, Hawthorn take on Collingwood in Hobart. Hawthorn's record in Tasmania, as we know, is very solid. I expect the Alistair Clarkson farewell tour to continue on a happy note for the Hawks. Collingwood have been great in recent weeks. Harvey is growing into the role, but I expect Hawthorn to dominate this match and notch up another win. And Harbir, what are your thoughts on the Saints versus Sydney?
Oh, well, Saints versus Sydney, it has a potential to be a very good game. But again, as I mentioned in the last time with West Coast, we don't know what St Kilda is going to put up and what kind of form they're going to come in. Look, it can't get, the stakes can't get more higher than that. They've got a good chance to be in top 8 if they beat Sydney. But Sydney, on the other hand, they're flying high at the moment. There is like no issues whatsoever. And there's a bit of an issue maybe with the defensive, because Essendon were able to score quite freely against them, although Sydney did manage to win at the end. So that could be one thing which St Kilda can pounce on. But I believe Sydney are far too good at the moment. And Fouad, what do you reckon about the Fremantle? You reckon they will still keep on their form?
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's a great game between two top teams. When I say top team, top 8 at the moment. If you see that Fremantle is coming out of a win, Brisbane's coming out of a loss. It depends who's going to recover quick and believe in him. They believe in themselves quickly and be confident to go ahead and do. But for me, because Brisbane was, up and down, I'm predicting an upset, which I believe Fremantle will be the winner.
Fouad, yeah, look, that's a really good preview, because Fremantle, They're clinging onto 8th spot. They're really struggling to hold on to that spot. They're on 36 points, a very poor percentage of 90.9. And with GWS Giants breathing down their back, they're only half a game out of the 8, but they have a superior percentage. They're on 95.1%.
And also they have half a game advantage, haven't they? So that can help them as well in the next 3 games. So what do you think, Harbir?
Yeah, well, Essendon's got 102 at the moment if it comes down to the percentage thing, but they are in the logjam with the 32 points with other team. So win's going to be crucial as well. Although if they can win big a couple of games, definitely they won't have any issues with the percentage. So it's going to come down to with this logjam. I think percentage is going to be a huge factor, but nevertheless, a win will be the win for any team.
I mean, gentlemen, don't rule out Essendon also, because although they're in 10th spot on 32 points, their percentage is way better than the Giants and Fremantle. They're on 102.7%. So if they happen to have a solid win this weekend, that catapults them back into the 8. They were in the 8 after that great performance against GWS the week before. So they're keen to have another win and build on their percentage and consolidate a spot in the 8.
I believe it's still wide open, George. There's still a few teams can make it, although it's going to be very hard for others through the percentage, of course.
And as ridiculous as it sounds, Richmond mathematically and with their percentage are still in the hunt.
Thank you, guys. Which brings me to my footy tips. And this week I'm going for Western Bulldogs, North Melbourne, Geelong, Carlton, Melbourne, Port Adelaide, Collingwood, Sydney, and Fremantle. With COVID restrictions and lockdowns, it is advisable to check with your local media for times and venues to confirm when and where your team is playing. That's all we have time for this week. You can also watch us in Adelaide on Channel 44 Friday evenings, on Aurora Foxtel TV at midday Saturday, and on the NEMBC YouTube. You are listening to this podcast on the Community Radio Network, and the AFL Diversity Language News can be heard on national multicultural radio stations. I am Venessa Gatica.
I'm Harbir Singh.
And I'm Fouad Andreas.
And I'm George Grossios.
Thank you, and see you next week.